Hello, my name is James Prest. We're going to pick up for where we left off in the last presentation. We're covering misconceptions from the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. We were just talking about compilations, and we showed how they sometimes what they'll do, whether it was intentionally done or unintentionally, I don't know, but they'll take a statement from Ellen White's writings, take it out of its context, and put it under a subtitle or a subheading of their own choice, and it can mean the complete opposite of what it just meant in the original source. So when you read anything in kind of compilation, you have to understand this may not be what she's saying at all. It could mean the complete opposite, which makes me not want to read any compilations, and I won't do it. I think they might be a great resource material. Look it up. Oh, she says this. Let me make sure this is what it's really saying, and then you go and you look at in folio views and see if that's really true. See if that's what she really wrote. Ellen White didn't write as many books as it seems. Okay, just a whole bunch of compilations where man takes it, interprets it the way they want, and puts it under a subtitle that fits their interpretation. This happens. I'm going to give you the example. I know I didn't cover it, but I want to give it to you in this one. Killing and war. If you read in Selected Messages 332 through 335, chapter number 38, Selected Messages, second Selected Messages, chapter 38. It's called On the Military Question. So it makes you think you're going to understand what you should do about the military question, right? Okay? They start out by quoting this stuff that she wrote, how the Lord commanded Moses to vex the Midianites and smite them because they had vexed Israel with their wiles, wherewith they had beguiled them to trespass the commandments of God. Next paragraph, the Lord commanded Moses to avenge the children of Israel and the Midianites, and then he should be gathered to his people. Moses commanded the men of war to prepare for battle against the Midianites, and they warred against them as the Lord commanded, and slew all the males, but they took the women and children captives. Okay, so it's given in an Old Testament example where God specifically told them to go kill these people, this other nation, right? And then it says, a paragraph down, or the next paragraph, it says, Moses commanded the men of war to destroy the women and male children. Okay, now you have to read in the Bible as to why. But the next paragraph starts off saying this: the Lord is regarded as cruel by many in requiring his people to make war with other nations. Okay? And then she goes on to say why it's actually what God wanted. And now you have to understand, this is answering the military question, right? Okay? So this is what they're quoting from her writings in Selected Messages, Book 2. And then they have this other little section, after they're done with that Old Testament war section, they have this little section called Light Given Concerning the Draft. And where she says in a letter that she wrote, she says, I call to mind many things that God had shown me in the past regarding to things of a similar character as the draft and other things, like when they were drafted and they had to go into war, or at least they were required by the government. She's like, I received light on the draft, you remember? Now, what's interesting in this compilation is they never quote it. Okay, you can actually find it in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, and I'll read it to you. But they never quote it. So they're like, okay, so here we have God commanded them to destroy other nations. Okay. Light was given concerning the draft. They never quote what the light was, and then they just quote this little thing that was written, I believe it was a letter, where she's saying how basically the government was requiring them to go to drill. And so they went to drill and everything went grand and glorious. They were required to go to drill. Military drill. They're not killing people, okay? They're jumping through tires and shooting targets, okay? But they're not killing people. This is a drill, okay? And now that's the complete thing. On the whole military question, in Selected Messages, Book 2, they give an example where God told Israel specifically. God specifically told them to go kill these people of the other nation. They mention the light concerning the draft, which is a requirement of the government for military purposes. They never quote it, and then they say that the government was requiring drill, and we sent them off, and we prayed for them, and all was grand and glorious. So it makes it seem like if the government requires you to go to war, well, you can go to war, right? No. This is all messed up, okay? There's a difference between jumping through hoops and shooting people that we're supposed to be taking the gospel to so we can save their souls before their probation closes, which you will effectually do if you shoot them, Okay? Let me read to you the light concerning the draft and explain some things here. This is the light concerning the draft. Now, I'm not going to read where she specifically mentions the word draft, because that's in a few paragraphs up. You can look at the context of what I'm about to read. But this is in Testimonies to the Church, Volume 1, 361, paragraph 2. I'm just going to read to you 2 sentences here. Okay? You can go read it in its context and study it for yourself. I'm not the criteria. All right? She says, in the army, they cannot obey the truth and at the same time obey the requirements of their officers. There would be a continual violation of conscience. Why? Because you're required to kill people. The people you're trying to get the gospel to before their life ends so you can save them. Okay? She mentions in here that God wrote and engraved the 10 Commandments on stone with his own finger. Okay? When you're in the military, they're not going to be so concerned about you keeping the Sabbath. Alright? Go read this. Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, 361, paragraph 1, and 361, paragraph 2. Go read it. She says, if the requirements of the rulers are such as conflict with the laws of God, the only question to be settled is, shall we obey God or man? Okay? This is the light concerning the draft. Okay? In the army, they cannot obey the truth and at the same time obey the requirements of their officers. There would be a continual violation of conscience. And people say, well, my conscience isn't violated. Well, maybe it's because your conscience is seared with a hot iron, like the Bible says. You've lost your conscience. Okay? So that's the light concerning the draft. Obey God or man. There would be a continual violation of conscience. You can't obey God and the requirements of your officers. That's the light concerning the draft, okay? Which they never quote in selected messages. They never quote that in second selected messages. They say, on the military question, God required these people to slay these people of the other nation, and and they mentioned where Ellen White mentions the light that she wrote concerning the draft. They never quote it, and they're like, the government required us to go to drill, and we went happily. Jumping through hoops and murdering people is different. This chapter is totally misleading. They never quote to you the light from the draft, which she mentioned. They never say you are going to be violating the 10 Commandments. They never quote that statement. It's misleading. It means the exact opposite of what it meant in its original context. In fact, forget original context. They didn't even chop the paragraph off. They just left it out completely. They didn't chop it up. They just didn't put it in there. Imagine if I put, and I know especially the conservative Adventists wouldn't know what to do with this one. Imagine I make a compilation of Bible verses, right? And I say, written by God, or by the pen of his prophets or something on the front of the book, written with, this is scriptures. And I have this subtitle that says something about how, can we obtain perfection? And then I put the verse up says, there's no one good, not one. And there's not a just man upon earth that doeth good and sinneth not. And I leave out all the other verses where God requires us to be perfect. And God says we can be perfect. And in Revelation where they're not perfect and he requires them to repent because of it. I leave all that out. That's what this is doing. You can't trust these compilations. Okay? They're not written by Ellen White. They're not in their original context. It's man's interpretation of what she said, and they put it under a subtitle that fits their interpretation. Okay? This is not an exhaustive resource. You can't just go to selected messages and say, oh, this is must be what Ellen White says on the military question. No. That's what man put in a book and says God said it. You can't, that's not safe at all. Compilation, this is why I won't read them. This is why when people quote to me from a compilation, I have to be like, well, I may or may not agree with your statement, but it's weightless to me until I check its context, because it can mean something totally opposite. Kill people versus not. Vote for people versus not. These are as far from the right from the left, the east from the west, light from dark, good from evil. Okay? Murder versus love. Okay, so this is why compilations don't have any weight with me. Okay? I want to cover this one, the great bicycle statement. People always use this, and they'll use it to justify or to make a point about all kinds of things. Always mentioning how Ellen White said that bikes were evil. and how and it's because they were expensive, and they're like, oh, they're cheaper today. They're not as expensive as they used to be because their money was worth more back then. Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's read the statement and see what she says. Let's not just don't even if somebody tells you about that. Oh, Ellen White says that bikes were evil because they were expensive. Don't even listen to that. Okay? Say, show me where she says it. Here's where she writes about it. This is Review and Herald, August 21, 1894, paragraph 11. I'm sure you've heard about the Great Bicycle Statement. She says, how is it with my brethren and sisters in America? How much do you practice self-denial in order that you may show liberality to the needy cause of God at this time? We are doing our work here under great pressure for the want of the very money that many of the members of our churches are expending upon their own fancies in pleasing and gratifying themselves. If they had accepted the testimonies I have borne to them concerning the Great One in these regions beyond, they would not be found expending $1 in following the example of those who are multiplying pictures of themselves and their families. You would not be purchasing bicycles, which you could do without, but would be receiving the blessing of God and exercising your physical powers in a less expensive way. Instead of investing $100 in a bicycle, you would consider the matter well, lest it might be at the price of souls for whom Christ died, and for whom he has made you responsible. Please read Isaiah 58 and see what is a sure remedy for poor health. That was the argument. People saying, well, I have bad health, I need to get a bicycle, I'll get some exercise. She's like, if you want a sure remedy for poor health, don't go get a bicycle. Go read Isaiah 58. It says if you give to the poor and needy, if you help them, and don't hide yourself from your own flesh. In other words, take the clothes off of yourself and give them to the needy. Then shall thy health spring forth as the morning. Or then shall thy light spring forth as the morning, and thy health shall spring forth speedily. Okay? So the excuse why I need it for my health. No. If you want health, take the money that you would spend in that unnecessary thing, give it to the poor and needy, and go plant flowers or something. Go run around the block. You don't need an expensive bicycle. Now, what was the issue here? Was the issue that it was expensive? Of course not. She says, listen to this. She says, if they had accepted the testimonies I had borne to them concerning the Great One in these regions beyond, they would not be found expending $1 in following the example of those who are multiplying pictures of themselves and their families. This is $1. This isn't just a $100 bicycle. She's like, look, I've given you testimonies. I've told you people out here are needy. You're multiplying pictures of yourselves and things, and then I'll quote, which you could do without. Which you could do without. These things are unnecessary for them. People over here are starving for the gospel, and you're spending all this money on yourself, gratifying yourself, so you can take care of your health, so you can multiply pictures of yourselves and stick them on your piano? What good is that going to do you? How's it going to help the souls out there? She says, instead of investing $100 in a bicycle, you would consider the matter well, lest it might be at the price of souls for whom Christ died, and for whom he has made you responsible. This has nothing to do with expensive. People say, well, I have a bike because it's not expensive. Or do you need it? Okay, some people may actually, I'm not saying bikes are evil. That's my whole point. I'm specifically saying that she's not saying that. And it's not a matter of expense. It's a matter of, could you do without it? And what are you doing to help those souls in need that are dying without the gospel? That's what she's talking about here. Okay? Some people may need a bike because it's the only way they can get to work. I'm not saying they're evil. I'm not saying you can't have one. I'm saying, can you do without it and instead put the money into helping people understand and know the love of Christ? That's what she's talking about. This has nothing to do with expensive. This has nothing to do with bikes are inherently evil. None of it. Okay? Read the statement. I'm going to go on to another one. I wanted to cover that because the great bias, they always using that to justify themselves. I say, hold on. I get out my notebook. I have it about 5 feet from my side. I pull it out and say, shall we read it? And of course they're like, well, yeah, I guess so. And I read it to them. I'm like, so where did it say that it was expensive and that's why it was wrong? Where did it say that? And they're like, well, it doesn't. Well, I know it doesn't. Okay? You can't just take up reports about what Ellen White said and say that's what she said. You have to read it for yourself. Don't believe anything anyone tells you. Because even if it was right, they may have got it from a compilation and she didn't really say that in its original context. It meant the complete opposite. You have to look for yourself, okay? And again, like I said, just because I get excited about this doesn't mean I'm against any one person who holds these ideas or has. I'm against the idea. It drives me nuts when people take God's words, turn them into the exact opposite, backwards, messed up spaghetti noodles thing, and serve it up on a plate to all God's people, and they're all like not knowing anything because they're being served garbage. Okay, that bothers me. I hate these ideas. I love you as people because I separate the sin from the sinner. I separate the crazy ideas from the individual. But come on, guys, we can't do this. Okay? This is another one. This will be the last one that I have for this clip here. People tell me all the time, they say, James, the Adventist church will go through because there's no eighth church. If you read in Revelation chapters 2 and 3, it says there's no eighth church. There's 7 churches, and that covers the complete New Testament. So they're like, no one's going to come out of Adventism, and that's going to be God's people. This is what they say. Okay? Now I'm going to read to you from Acts of the Apostles, 585, paragraph 3. She says, the names of the 7 churches are symbolic of the church in different periods of the Christian era. The number 7 indicates completeness and is symbolic of the fact that these messages extend to the end of time, while the symbols used reveal the condition of the church at different periods in the history of the world. So the names of the 7 churches are symbolic of the church in different periods of the Christian era. The 7 churches are 7 time periods. People say there's no 8th church, James. There's no 8th church. There can't be a coming out of the Adventist church because we're the last one. We're in the last time period. Yes, that's exactly my point. It's the last time period, not the last church. There could be 1,000 churches in the time period of Laodicea. There could be 1,001. There could be 5 or 7 or 1,000,000. You can't tell that. The 7th church of Laodicea is a time period. It's not a church. It's not a church. It's a time period. She says that. The names of the 7 churches are symbolic of the church in different periods of the Christian era. Now, if you watch my Final Reformation series, which I recommend that you do, you'll find that I mention in there, towards the end, that the Adventist church will be illegal in the end. It can't go through, because it'll be illegal unless it accepts Sunday. They're going to make it a requirement that Saturday worship is evil. And you'll receive the death sentence. The Seventh Adventist church can't go through because it'll be illegal unless they accept the mark of the beast. Okay? So, this idea that there's no 8th church, of course there's no 8th church because there's no 8th time period. It has nothing to do with church. It has to do with time period. There's not going to be a time period after Laodicea, but there may be a church after the Adventist church. I don't know. I'm not saying there is. I'm saying this argument really stinks. Okay? That's all that I'm saying. No 8th church means no 8th time period. Not there won't be anybody after Adventism. There may have to be somebody after Adventism if the Adventist church accepts Sunday. It'll be illegal. There has to be a coming out. Because the Adventist church will be illegal. So you'll have to come out of it. Or something has to happen. I'm not saying you have to leave the Adventist church. I'm saying it'll be illegal. It will no longer be officially recognized as a church. So God's people will just be these people under no name or something. Okay? Or the Adventist church will accept the mark of the beast, and I'm sure you won't want to be there if it does. But you've got to get this idea. There's no 8th church. And I've heard this clear across the board with all Adventism. There's no 8th church. So, that doesn't mean anything. All that means is there's no 8th time period. There could be 1,000 churches in the time period of Laodicea. So anyway, that's what I want to cover for today. I may do more in the future. But again, my name is James Prest. You can view this and like presentations at answersforadventist.wordpress.com. Study for yourself. Don't accept these compilations. Don't accept man's interpretations. Don't accept rumors about what Ellen White has said, done, or written. Go read it for yourself and see if that's really the case. Okay? So thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again soon. God bless.